Guys, good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. If you're able to hear me, can you give me a quick yes in chat? Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we are just about to get started. Awesome. Guys, it is 7:03. We should get started. So this is fantastic. So let's kind of quickly get started. So we have with us today Abhini. She's one of our alumnus. She's kind of graduated from Grey Atom at some point in time in the past. So she will be presenting to you a very interesting model. I think this is based on the work that she typically does. Abhini, I believe you can hear us. Can you give us like a quick hi to all of us over here?
Hi Mayuresh and hi everyone. I can hear you.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much. So, guys, I think we are just going to have a very quick conversation, maybe like the first 10 minutes, just to make sure that everyone understands, who Abhini is, and from there on, we can just quickly, dive into the presentation. We have budgeted 60 minutes for this particular webinar, and we believe we should be able to do like great justice to this particular topic. So first 15 minutes, we'll just quickly try and get some of these questions, which typically, we would like to understand Abhini to answer for all of us. So Abhini, can you just give us a quick background of, what you were doing before you were a data scientist? Or what was your past life like?
Sure. So I did my engineering in electronics and telecommunication from Mumbai University. Post that I joined Cognizant Technology Solutions. I was in the IT field, but soon I switched to Geo as I did not enjoy pure coding much. So in Geo, I was working on network automation. I was there in the domain expertise team. So basically, the core of telecom. While I was performing job over there, I realized that I needed to upskill myself. So parallelly, I started my management course. I did a general management course from IIM Calcutta, that was executive course. But while I was doing that, I got interested in data science. So I started learning something about data science, and eventually I developed interest into it. So as soon as I finished my management course, I joined Grey Atom and did my course with Grey Atom in data science. And post that, within 1 or 2 months, I switched my job to finally into data analytics. And currently, I'm working in Nearby Technologies as an assistant manager in data analytics.
Awesome, awesome, great. Thank you so much, Abhini. Abhini, can you just quickly help us understand, what does your typical day look like, at near pay?
Yeah. So over in my current job, there are multiple factors which I need to look at. So basically, my work involves presenting actionable insights to management as well as the teams which are there inside the company, such as marketing, finance, or sales. So when it comes to my regular day at work, most of the day, as in if you would say 50 to 60% of it goes in researching or developing, designing the analytics. Rest 30% of it goes in implementation of the same, and some part of it, like 10 to 15% in managing all the projects which are currently running and any future projects.
Got it. And could you just quickly help us all about, how was your transformation journey? I mean, it must have taken some time, some effort. So,
Sure.
how was it like?
Sure. It was an interesting journey, I must say. It took me like it took everybody a lot of effort when you have to switch the fields, the career field. So yeah, it took me around a year to get fully confident to in data analytics field before I switched. So I studied on my own. Plus, I did course from Grey Atom, which was around 10-month course. And post that, I switched to data science finally.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you so much. And once you kind of started looking out for opportunities,
Mhm.
how was the job market like? Did you get like the first job that you applied, or did you have to go through some iteration? How was it, that experience?
Yeah, I can't say it was difficult, but yes, it was very challenging because coming from a non-data background, it is a little difficult to get your first job into this market. So I applied to a lot of opportunities. I gave around 13 to 14 interviews and got rejected
Wow.
before I got my first job.
Right. Right. So I just want to repeat that number. It's 13 to 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I think that that's been the experience. I mean, we have had so many people who successfully kind of transition, and I think everyone kind of sees, that the last success. I think the transition, and I think the person getting the job, but it is really typically a lot of iteration that goes into it. So,
Yes, yes,
and this is
definitely.
very realistic. Great. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I have a deck. I'm not going to go through that particular deck at all. I'm going to hand it back over to Abhini very quickly. But I'm just going to take maybe like a couple of minutes to quickly introduce what Grey Atom is, and that should be it. So, guys, my name is Mayuresh. I am the co-founder at Grey Atom. It's like a little late to introduce myself, but yeah, quickly, getting along. So, guys, I think we are, in the field for the last 4 years. We've had close to 6,000 students who have benefited from Grey Atom across formats. And at any point in time, especially right now, we have close to 1,55,000 who are part of our online platform who are benefiting from it in different formats. So we've seen a lot of people getting jobs in simple words, and our success is the success of our students, and that is them getting jobs. So we have seen a lot of them succeed, and as a result of that, we have been able to put together like a very concise roadmap for a person to get a job. And there are those basically 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars where we believe people can consistently get a job no matter what is the market like. And that's essentially what we want to bring over here. This particular session is not about how to get a job right now or anything of that sort, but this is about we want to get into the deep end of the pool and try and understand what this whole thing is. So I'm going to just maybe take 2 to 3 minutes, just quickly run through this particular part where I'm going to tell you like what is it that market, what is it that your employer who's out there looking out for, how do you kind of prepare for it, and I think what Abhini spoke about in the first 5 minutes with respect to how her transition was, and she's going to speak more about the churn models and everything going forward. But I just want to quickly touch upon it and then kind of quickly move on to the main subject matter in the meeting. So, guys, I think what is it that market really wants? What is it that your employer really wants? The employer wants you to be hands-on. The employer wants you to get your hands dirty. The employer doesn't want a people manager or anything of that sort. Very, very simply put, employer wants you to be able to do the stuff end to end. The whole machine learning pipeline, you should be able to handle that. You should have one special skill. You should have depth in a particular topic, a specific algorithm, a specific part in that particular pipeline. And by depth, we mean depth. Depth means you need to understand that programmatically, mathematically, the production level details, all those kinds of things. And finally, guys, you need the ability, you have to have the ability in you to be able to continuously learn. Because whatever you learn, when you go in the market, when you get into the job scenario, you will need to continuously keep on learning. So that's pretty much the reality. And this is very much true for the Indian recruiter. I'll just come back once again, get your hands dirty, know the thing end to end, have depth in one particular thing, and keep on learning. That's like the super simple skill. Here's the thing, we spoke about some of these things. Guys, at the end of the day, you need a place where you're able to practice consistently. You need to practice. You learn cycling by cycling. You don't learn cycling by watching videos. Similarly, you learn programming by programming. That's exactly what is at the heart of this particular program and all the programs that we design at Creatum. And we just want to bring it from you. At the end of the day, we believe that self-paced learning will take you some distance, but you will need mentors at some point in time. And you will need to put together a whole host of portfolio projects when you go to the market. So everything that we're saying right now is based on some experience, on some proven success, And that's exactly what we're trying to get to you over here. So these are just, I think some screenshots from thankful learners, and won't get into it and not spend much time over here. I think you might know this person. I think she's going to address us in some time right now. Great, awesome. Just want to get one last thing over here. Even in the current market, even in the current situation, given the corona, covid, and all the realities, there are people who are continuing to get jobs. And this is something, like an internal screenshot. And again, there is no date over here, but this is an internal screenshot. People are still continuing to get jobs. It is tough. The job market possibly has shrunk, and there's no beating around the bush. There's no other way to package it. That is the reality. But there is a way to get a job if you're really good. So, guys, that's pretty much it. I'm going to wrap up the session over here. I'm not going to take this session any forward. I'm going to come back at the flag end of this particular session and just quickly help you understand two things. One is next week we have a 5-day boot camp that is going live. So please go to the Grey Atom website and discover more about the 5-day boot camp, where we will be building one project end to end. So it is a 5-day data science bootcamp. Please discover about it on the Grey Atom website. And there are programs that are listed on the Grey Atom website. And we'll come back to you at the end of this particular session with a special deal on that. Great. That's pretty much it, guys. It is 7:14. Awesome. We have a good 45 minutes here for Abhini. So Abhini, I believe you are totally ready. We have 364 people the whole year packaged, and those are the number of people online. So I'll just hand it over to you, Abhini.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just going to stop my screen sharing, and Abhini, it is over to you.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen? Okay. Let's start with today's topic. I'm going to cover churn analysis in detail. But before I get to the core of the topic, I wanted to cover some of the facts which I had come across when I was doing my projects. So those are general facts whenever you are encountered with any business problem. So I'll just start off with that. Whenever you are given any business problem, it is usually a very complex problem, and when you see it as a whole, it gets sometimes get frustrating, or it gets difficult to understand. So what we need to do is we need to fraction it. You need to cut it in some of the parts and then analyze separately, and then stitch together to get the whole picture. When it comes to understanding any business problem, the biggest role is that how you ask question in order to understand the particular problem. So I want to touch upon few of the things which I use. Basically, I use the 3W approach. This is why, who, and what. So whenever I come across any problem, I start with one second, yeah. I start with why. So asking why gives you a purpose to your analysis. So why we are doing this basically. So, it gives you the reason why you're doing this. It gives you a clear purpose, and mostly it is important because data analytics is very information driven field, and there are many things which you are bombarded with, many techniques or many algorithms, and most of the time you get confused and get lost in the data. It is very it frequently happens. So having a purpose gives you a clear roadmap as to what you want to do and how it is going to look like when you accomplish it. It gives you the purpose as well as it gives you the end goal. And the second question I ask is who. Like, who are we doing this for? It gives you a target audience. It gives you details about and target audience, and why is it needed is because knowing your audience is important because of mainly two things. It first of all, it gives you user interface and interpretability. So basically your audience is the prompt in making the user interface, how it should look like. Their background gives you idea as to how complex or simple your interaction with the module should be, so that the other person is be able to use it very easily. And also it helps you in the part of storytelling. Whenever you are done with any analysis, you need to explain it to someone in order to make them use it. So it helps you in that scenario when you know your audience. The third question is what. Basically, it gives you details as to what you actually want to do, which technique are you going to use, and how are you going to solve the problem. So whenever you are encountered with any problem, just please ask these three questions, and it will make your life easier when you are solving those problems. So this is usually the life cycle which happens. It's never one way. It is a cyclical order. So you ask questions, then you discuss with maybe internal team or any concerned person. Then you design your system before implementing. Like from designing to creating, there is one more step in between, which is taking feedback. So before you create anything, just show the raw design. This is how it is going to look like when it is when it is ready. Take feedback, and if it is ready, like if it is approved, then create your cost cut. Assess it, and assessing part, like your why question helps you in that. So whatever you have built, is it sufficing the purpose of why you have done that? And if it is, then again show it to the concerned people for whom you have done this analysis. Again, this is again an iterative process, and it keeps on going until and unless the final product is ready, and it can be used by the concerned team. So this is about it. This was just a brief background as to how you want to do your analysis. Now we'll come back to our main topic for today, which is churn analysis. I'll be covering few of the topics, starting from what is churn, how do you define it, how do you measure it, how can you minimize it, how can you track it, and also how can you predict it. So let's just get started with the first topic. What is churn? Churn is basically when your customer is moved out of your business. Any customer which is which is your client, or which is your customer, has some monetary value associated with him, past and also in the future. And if this particular customer is lost, or if it is churned out of the system, it is a loss in your future business. So this is why churn analysis is very important, because if you do churn analysis, those losses in the future can be minimized. So this is the basic formula for churn analysis, getting the churn rate. Basically, it is users at the beginning of the period minus the users of the end of the period upon the users at the beginning of the period. So churn is a time bound time bound entity. You have to define it for a certain amount of period. Usually in our business we define it per month. So we take users which were active last month minus the users which were active in current month upon the users in active last month. So this subtraction gives you the number of people who basically have left from your system. And this is basically a ratio or a percentage, and this is the basic formula for the same. So now let's come to how you define churn for your industry. Now when I started with churn analysis for the first time, I did not know this thing, that the definition of churn is highly dependent on the industry which you are operating in. So there can be, in regards to churn, there can be two type of industries. One is a subscription based industry and non-subscription based industry. So let's look at how churn analysis is different in each of these industries. Let's start off with the subscription based industry. Now, what is, first of all, what is a subscription based industry is The users are basically users or customer basically tied to the company through any sort of subscription. So basically, if you say Netflix, you have to buy a monthly subscription, and if you don't have it, you won't be able to use their services. So this is a subscription-based service example. Similarly, for telecom operators, you have to do recharges every month. So this is a kind of subscription, and this is again in a subscription-based industry. So defining churn for these particular industries is an easier task because you have a clear indication of when a person or a customer is leaving your system. So if any customer has not renewed their subscription for a certain amount of period, you know that this particular customer has churned out of my system. So it is easier for a subscription based industry to define churn. Now, this is, if you're interested, you can read upon more on it. There is a case study on Netflix regarding the churn. So, as you know, Netflix is a OTT platform, and it has managed to keep their churn rate very low, and it is around 11%. So basically, this case study talks about the uh, need of retaining the customers. Like many OTT platform, what they do is they focus on adding more customers, but they forget that when their free subscription is going to end, most probably people are going to leave their particular platform. But Netflix has managed that. Netflix has done a nice job in user engagement, and through that they have successfully kept their churn rate as low as 11%. So you can read more upon it. But next, let's move forward to non-subscription based industries. So now non-subscription based industries are those industry in which user is not bound to the business through any of the contract or the subscription. So what he does is, whenever he needs the services, he comes to the business, he buys the services, interacts with the business, and then he is dormant for a while till the time he feels the need to buy again. So such industries, the example for such is e-commerce or fintech. So in e-commerce, say Amazon, you don't uh, daily go and buy, or you don't have a subscription. You buy when you need something, and then you're dormant for a while. You don't do anything with it. And then when you need again something, you go and buy. So finding churn in such kind of businesses is a difficult task because there is no particular label as to whether a particular customer has churned out of the system or not. So that's why we need to use proxy data over here. And what is proxy data is, we need some kind of variable or some kind of indication of the customer, whether he is still in the system or whether he has left. So the most commonly used proxy data or parameters in case of finding churn while for non-subscription based industries are recency, frequency, and monetary parameters, which are usually called RFM. So let's understand what are those parameters. Yeah. So recency is basically how recent, uh, how recently has your customer interacted with your business. So it's basically the time which has elapsed since the customer's last activity or transaction with the brand or with the business, and it gives you an idea about the activity or dormancy of the particular customer. So if he is not active for say around 2 to 3 months, his recency is around more than 90 days, you know that he has a probability of churning out of your system. Frequency gives you the indication of how many times has the customer interacted with your system since the customer was onboarded onto your system. So it basically gives you So it's basically a number of purchases maybe, or number of times your app was launched, or anything which is suitable for your business, but it gives you a number of times interaction was made uh, from the customer to your business. And the third is monetary value. So every customer has some monetary value associated with them. So there are some buyers, if you see in Amazon also, there are some buyers which usually buy cheaper things, and maybe they are very frequent in buying things, but they usually prefer things which are less than 500 or something like that. On the other hand, there can be some customers which are very, they go beyond, they go behind brands or something like that, and they buy products which are very expensive. So you can bifurcate customers between based on their monetary value which is given to your business. So these three things when combined together, recency, frequency, and monetary, gives you the total idea of how your customer is behaving based on his past experience with the business. And you can, these three things can prompt you to find out the churn. So now this is a matrix which is basically a recency frequency matrix. How you can form this is basically you can score any customer based on his recency and frequency in terms of low, medium, and high. So you can bucket the recency and frequency. Lower the frequency, higher will be your recency score, because lower the recency, higher will be your recency score. Because when your recency is low, it signifies that you have just interacted with the system and very unlikely to get churn. So you have a high recency score. And for frequency, higher is the number, higher is the uh, frequency score. And you can divide it into three buckets of low, medium, and high on both the axes. Now you can see people having high scores in both the parameters are your star customers. Basically, these are the customers who are buying very frequently also, and they are still associated with the system and not dormant. So these are your star customers, and it goes like from the top right corner to the bottom left corner in the descending order of your customer engagement. So you can have a look at this matrix from star to promising to novice. Now novice are the customers whose recency is high, which means they have just interacted with the system, but the frequency is low. So which probably means that they have just been onboarded in the system a small while ago, and hence they have low frequency. Those are called novice. These uh, these set of customers with low recency and high frequency are the most vulnerable people to leave, because their frequency were the frequency was high in the past, which means they were doing business with you for a like they were doing frequent business with you. But low recency score shows you that they have not interacted with your system for a very long time now. So they were pretty active in the past, but now they have not uh, interacted with the system, and hence probably these customers might have churned. Or maybe this whole section, need attention, at risk, and dormant, might have churned. So this is again just recency and frequency. I've not included monetary part over here. But if you can see, if I consider these three sections to be churned, I can again divide these three sections uh, uh, into monetary parts. So people having high monetary score are to be looked at first when it comes to regaining those particular customers, because they were giving you high monetary value as well, and now they are lost. So you can sort your customer based on the monetary value which they were giving you. So this is a recency frequency matrix. So, and this is how you define churn when you're running a business which is non-subscription based. Now let's move on to measuring and interpreting churn. Just a second. Okay. So in the previous part of the session, I explained you about the formula for churn rate, which was basically number of people left the system upon the number of people which are there at the starting of the period. So this gives you an idea of the percentage of the people left, and it is hence a kind of measure for measuring churn. But only a single number does not give you a full picture. So whenever you're doing such kind of analysis, always try to form multiple measures and try to look at them in conjunction. So what you can do is you can divide the customer data based on various factors like geography, or if you are having multiple services, you can do it service wise. So whenever you are dividing it based on say geography, you get churn rate for 28, so 28 to 29 states differently. So it gives it can uncover some hidden patterns. Maybe the states in east or northeast are not giving you much business, the churn rate is high, and west part of the India is giving you higher business, or the churn percentage is low over there. So you get these kind of details when you divide your data into multiple factors like these mentioned here. And you can use, so, like in our business we have used these three kind of measures. You can use the same. It's the volume of churn, basically customer count, number of customers who have churned from your system, percentage of the churn, and the associated monetary value with respect to churn. And you have to look at these three factors in conjunction. And why is it important? Because say in northeast you have very little business, and so churn rate is say 75%, which means 75% of your customers have left the system in last 1 month. But talking about just percentage term, it might panic you that there is a so much loss in customers. But if you see the monetary value, it may be very less, say less than around 0.5% of your total business. So even though your percentage is very high, your monetary value is very less. So it is not that big a deal to maybe lose a couple of customers in that particular region. So when you look at all these metrics at the same time, you get this picture as to how is the actual churn distribution going in your particular business. So this is how you measure and interpret churn. Okay, next part is preventing or minimizing churn. So when you know that the churn is happening, so the natural reaction is that you will try to minimize or prevent the churn, because doing so will increase your business or maybe retain the customers. So how you can do is maybe by two main things which is usually done, which is targeted marketing and product assessment and improvement. So people basically leave the business due to two reasons. One is because they have found any other competitor more suitable for their requirements, or maybe is the competitor is offering services in lesser price, or maybe your system or your business has some bugs, and it is very frustrating for the user, and hence the particular customer is leaving the system. So these two things can be churn because of these two things can be minimized. Firstly, by targeted marketing. So if the customer is leaving just because of the monetary reasons, you can give the customer discounts so that he stays with the system for a longer duration of time. And the second is if you find out the person or the customer is leaving because your particular business or system has bugs, then you need to do your product assessment and improvement continuously in order to make the experience good for the customer so that they won't leave the system. So these are the two things. But is like, do we have to prevent every churn which is happening in the system? And the answer is no, you don't, because it depends on the customer lifetime value. I'll come to what is customer lifetime value in a while. But before that, I'll have to tell you that retaining any customer has some value associated, has some monetary value associated with it. So when you're doing targeted marketing, you are investing some part of your human resources or the uh, uh, budget on that particular thing. Same for product assessment. So you're investing some of your money to make the customer stay in your system. But if that particular money which is spent on the churn retention is higher than the value which you will get from the customer in his whole lifetime, then it is not worth to retain that particular customer. So this is what you have to look at when you are trying to prevent churn, and that's where customer lifetime value comes into the picture. So CLV, it is called CLV, and CLV is mostly the total value the company is going to get from the entire relationship with that particular customer. So you have to see for, so I'll just go on to the formula. So first of all, you have to find out the lifetime value of the customer, which is basically a multiplication of the average value of sale into number of transaction into the retention period. Now let's go one by one. So retention period is basically how long, for how long do you think the customer is going to remain with your particular business in his entire lifetime? So this can be in months or years, or maybe if your business is so common, or that the person needs the product every day for his entire lifetime, this retention time can even be number of years. So this is what you have to find out, what is the retention time period. In his whole retention time period, how many number of transactions is he expected to do? This is the second parameter, and third parameter is for each and every transaction, what is the average value which is expected out of that particular sale. So when you multiply these three parameters, you get the lifetime value of the customer. Again, this is the total business which any customer which any customer will give you, but it is not the profit which you are going to get from that customer, because you have some expenses which you have to take into account. So that's why LTV, or lifetime value, is often multiplied with your profit margin to ultimately land to a customer lifetime value. So this is basically the profit which you are going to get from your customer from his lifetime entire lifetime interaction with your particular business. So you need to first of all find out this, then compare it with the efforts or the investment which you are putting to make the customer stay, and you have to take the decision accordingly if you have to let go the customer, or if the customer is very important that you need to retain them. So this is in regards to that thing. Coming on to the next part, which is churn tracking. Now, tracking churn is important because you're investing uh, your monetary value as well as your human resources in making the customer stay. But you have to check whether the measures which you are doing for preventing the churn, are they working or not, and that's why you have to track the churn. So you have to track all the customers, um, and check whether the previously churned customers have done transaction with your system, with your business again, so that they have retained or regained. So this is basically just one factor which you have to take into consideration, and yeah, that's it. Now the next part is predicting churn. Now this is one important part, because just describing churn is not going to suffice your purpose. Describing describing or defining churn is for the past data, and you can't do anything, like you can do very less when the customer has already left your system or the business. But if you can predict whether a particular customer is going to get churn or going to leave your business in a couple of months or say in near future, then you can take preventive actions or something to make the customer stay with your business. So that's why predicting churn is an essential part of churn analysis. Now again, it has to be looked at through two different sets of industries, like we discussed few moment ago, which is subscription based and non-subscription based. So for subscription based, since you have a defined label, churn label, which is your subscription status, which is if it is still subscribed, then it is not churned, and if it is not subscribed, the renewal is not made, then it is churn. So you have that particular label with you. So it becomes basically a two-class classification problem, and which can be solved with any classical machine learning algorithm in terms of classification. Now, one of the challenges that can occur in this particular case is you have the labels, but you don't know what is contributing to those labels. So basically, you have the dependent variable, but finding out independent variables can be tricky in this case. So I have listed few of the independent variables which might imply the churn of the customers, which is customer complaint data, app performance, user rating, recency, frequency monitoring. So these are some factors which you can look upon while doing a churn prediction for subscription-based business. You can go ahead with any classification algorithm, starting from basic data, decision tree algorithm. And why am I suggesting decision tree is because it gives you a clear, understanding as to how the partition is made in terms of getting the labels correct. So it might give you something like, say, people having user rating less than 2 and recency less than, sorry, greater than 90 plus frequency less than 5 is ultimately leading to churn. So you get that particular distinction when you're doing it through decision tree. However, you have to see how much accuracy your particular model is giving, and if it is not, so you can certainly move to higher machine learning algorithms such as random forest or maybe some ensemble models like that. But today I'm not going to talk much about the subscription based industry. I'll focus more on the non-subscription based industry because it is a bit trickier to find out how to predict churn in such kind of cases. So let's move on to non-subscription based industry. Now, as defining churn is difficult in these kind of industries, predicting churn is even more difficult in this kind of industry. So you basically have to follow a probabilistic model rather than a deterministic model in such cases. And one such model which I come across was buy till you die algorithm. So basically, this algorithm is a probabilistic model which helps you to quantify two things. First is customer lifetime value, as we discussed sometime before, and the second is the probability of the customer being alive. And what do you mean by alive is the probability to be still there in your system. So this is again, since this is a probabilistic model, it gives you a life probability between 0 to 1, and you can set a threshold that maybe if my probability of alive is, if it is less than 0.5 or say zero point 0.4, then I'll consider that particular person as churn or not churn. So let's see how this model works, or how is it going to give us these two parameters. So this algorithm basically makes use of the negative binomial distribution. So I'll tell you how is it and what it is. So if you read the definition, it gets very confusing. It says this distribution is a discrete probability distribution that models the number of failures in a sequence of independent and identical distributed Bernoulli trials before a specified number of success occurs. Now this is a very confusing statement. So let's break it and understand what it is actually. So let's start with what is a Bernoulli trial. A Bernoulli trial is basically any random experiment which is going to give you two results, two possibilities of the results, and the probability of those possibilities is equal, that is 50% each. So one such experiment anybody can think of is tossing a coin. It has two possibilities and the probability are equal. So this is Bernoulli trials. Now, what binomial distribution does is, whenever you're tossing a coin, it can be so if you suppose head as your success and tail as your failure, then suppose if I want to see two heads, two times the head should occur. So I have to flip the coin multiple times. It can be twice I tossed and twice in the two consecutive tosses only I got heads and heads. But it will rarely happen. Many a times it will happen that you are getting tails, which is a failure. And after some tosses you get a head, and again after some tosses you get the head. So, but what negative binomial distribution does is it find out how many times, how many failures will you be encountering till the time you reach the success n number of r number of times basically. So if I'm if the success, if the r is 2, then basically how many times do I have to toss the coin in order to get two heads on that particular coin is your negative binomial distribution. So you can see the graph here when r is changing. Wait, just 1 second. Yeah, so when r is 1, so r is 1, it is decreasing, and as r is increasing, the number of successes is increasing. It is a curve which is moving to the right. So when r is 1, why is it decreasing? Because you have to just see the success once. That is, there is a high chance that you toss a coin and it is a head. So that's why the success is more in one try or zero try, and it decreases with the number of tries. But as your r increases, um, your number of tries will also increase in that particular manner. So this is a binomial distribution, and bi-dilute algorithm basically makes use of this distribution to predict whether a particular customer is alive or not. So taking the analogy of tossing a coin further, what it basically does is, suppose you're a customer to any company, and you need to buy something. So and you have a coin in your hand. So you toss it. Hello. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. So you toss it, and then you realize. So if it is heads, you buy the particular product, and if it is tails, then you don't buy it. So this behavior is modeled through bi-till-you-die algorithm and gives you a probability. So the mathematics behind this particular algorithm is very complex, and I will not cover it in much detail because it will take a lot of time. But I'll just go on to the implementation part in Python. Uh, the model, sorry, the library used over here is lifetimes. So will for this particular implementation, we will use the inbuilt data set in that particular package, which is transactional data. So as you can see, I have a transaction data, which is basically ID of that particular customer and the date of the purchase. So the data, like you have to get the data in the similar format when you're doing this buy till you die approach. You have a customer ID and the date of purchase. So if you can see, there are total 15,273 transactions in this particular data set, and it has around 5,000 unique users or customers. And the data is for the whole 2014, starting from January 1st to December 31st. Now we'll see on this data, how is the customer lifetime value and the alive pattern going. So this data, which was basically in the form of ID and date, we need to transform it into the form of frequency, recency, and time period. So we'll have a look at what these parameters means with respect to this particular library. So frequency is basically a number of repeat purchase. It's not the number of total purchase, it's the number of repeat purchase, which means it is one less than the total number of purchase ever made. So if you have just bought something for once, the frequency will be zero since you are not repeated the purchase. The recency here is a bit different from what we have seen previously. The recency here shows the number of time periods elapsed since between the first transaction and the latest transaction. So it basically gives you the idea as the for how much duration are you active on the system. So if I have made a first purchase on say March, on say May 1st, and I did my second purchase on May 15th, then the recency will be 15 over here. The T basically is the age of the customer till now, since his first transaction with the system. So like continuing the previous example, so if I've done my first transaction on May 1st and today is May 21, so my total age or T will be 21. So if you see the reference, the first reference is the same for recency and T, which is your first date of transaction. What is changing is in case of recency, you're using the date for the latest transaction, and for T, you're using the current date or today's date. So the difference between T and recency will give you the number of days for which you have not been active on the system. So let's just go ahead. So this is the function which is used to transform the data. It does transform the data automatically, and you don't have to do anything. It basically takes your transaction data into transaction data. You have to give the customer ID column as ID and date time column. So this was date in our case, and the observation end period. So this date is basically used to calculate your T, and it is taken as the current date or the last date. So this is 31st December 2014, and after running that, I get a summary which looks kind of this, in which I have particular customer's ID, the frequency, recency, and T according to it. So if I look at this particular customer, so what these metrics tell you is that he had made 3 purchases. That's why the repeat purchase frequency is 2. Total 3 purchases in 9 days, and the T is 183, which means in the first 9 days he made 3 purchases, and after that around 174 days he was not active in the system. That's why the T is very high. So this this indicates that this particular customer might have left the system since he has not been active on the system for a very long period of time. And you can analyze for all the rest customers over here. So after you transform your data into this format, you have to model it. So you have to fit the beta geofitter model, which is there in the lifetimes library. So using this beta geofitter model, which basically uses the negative binomial distribution, it gives you two things. It gives you the expected number of purchases and it gives you the live probability. So expected number of purchase, sorry, okay, so when you fit the model, you have to just use the beta geofitter uh, model, and this is the only hyperparameter which is available in that particular model, which is penalizer coefficient. It basically you don't have to specify it. By default it is 0, but if you are feeling that your model is getting overfitted, you can just increase the penalization factor so that the model is fit properly and it is not overfitted. So I've used the coefficient of 0.001, which is the least. Then you have to fit the model and give, like, the inputs given to this model is the frequency, recency, and t, which you have just found out in the step before. So this is fitting the model. Then you have to give the time period for which you have to predict. So I'm giving 90, which means I'm going to predict for the next 3 months. And I have input data for 1 year and like 12 months, and I'm going to predict for the next 90 days. So there can be, as I described, there are two things: expected number of purchase and live probability. So for getting expected number of purchase, you have to use this function, which is conditional expected number of purchase up to time. So you can check for the description by clicking the, oh sorry, 1 second. Okay, it's not happening, but you can check the description. It basically takes the time period, fees, summary, like frequency, recency, and uh, T, and it gives you a purchase, expected purchase for next 90 days. So if you can see, I have sorted it in ascending order, sorry, descending order, in terms of expected purchase. So this particular user 1623 is expected to buy 24 times in the next 90 days, and so on. So you can cross check also. You can see from the summary. So if I say summary, dot 1623. Okay, I have not run the entire code, that's why it is giving error, but you can run it, and you can see, like, what is the past frequency, recency, and t, uh, which is associated with 1623. It will be very high, and that's why it is predicted that it will buy for the next 24 times in next 90 days. The next is the live probability, which is again, you can derive it from this particular function, conditional probability alive, and it gives you a probability between 0 and 1 of your customer being alive or not. And as I said, you can set up a threshold. In this case, I have set up 0.5 threshold. So if the probability is less than 0.5, then I'll say that this particular customer is churned out of the system. And you can say the percentage is pretty high. It is around 47.5% of the people are going to leave in next 90 days from the whole set of number. The last part is assessing the model performance. Now you have built the model, but you need to check how is it performing. So you can check it from this particular graph. This basically gives you. So this is the number of calibration period transaction versus the customers, number of customers. So I'll tell you what is it. This is basically number of. So this is basically a frequency, which is expected number of purchase in the future. So if your expected number of purchases is given as 0, and actually you made 0 transaction. So this is blue is actual, and orange is predicted by model. So model predicted, so the actual number of people who did not make any second transaction was around 2500 or 2400, and model predicted around 2300 or so. So you can check vis-a-vis how is the model performing with respect to actual data and the model performance by making use of this plot period transaction. And okay, there are two more graphs which I would like to explain. The one is plot frequency recency matrix, which basically gives you customer's historical frequency and its historical recency, and the color denotes the number of future purchase for 1 unit of time. Now, in our case, 1 unit of time is 1 day. So, at any particular day, if you have to predict, so if you have to see which one customer will buy your product on that particular day, you can see high probabilities are those with yellows, and it is fading out to the blue ones. So you can see if the past frequency of a particular customer is say greater than 70, and the customer's recency is around 275 and higher, which means he has been in the system active for around 275 days or higher and has bought from the system for more than 70 times, then he is very likely to buy in that particular day. And this is decreasing. This is decreasing from the like both sides. But you need to see one thing, that the transition in which is this frequency column, frequency axis is gradual, but in customer recency it is very abrupt. So what you can interpret from this particular thing is, irrespective of frequency matters, but it does not matter that much. In order to keep customers in your system, like they should buy from your system, you need to keep them engaged for at least 250 days. If they are in your system for 250 days, they are most likely to stay, irrespective of their frequency of purchase. So you have to focus, in this case, you have to focus more on user engagement than the frequency. And the last graph is again like the alive probability in terms of when it is distributed over frequency and recency. Now you can see this is a sharply decreasing curve again with respect to recency and frequency. So the people who have higher customer recency and frequency also are more likely to stay alive, and it is going to decrease as soon as you are reaching the other ends of the axis. So this is how you can assess, the how are the customers going to remain in your system, or how when they are going to get churned out, and you can proactively monitor their statistics or their past performance based on these particular factors, and predict when they are going to leave from your system. So this is as to how you can predict the churn in case of non-subscription based industries. And I've also listed some of the resources which I have used while creating this particular tutorial, or these I have used for my particular gaining knowledge also. So yeah, I think this is it from my side, and I'll hand it over to Mayuresh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhini. Great. So I think we've reached somewhere like 8:06, just over the budgeted time. I think we'll take a few questions if there are any at this point in time. So that would be like awesome. So I think just few pointers over here. Abhini is a data scientist, who's working in the field, and this is exactly what they do. They solve problems for their customers. They solve problem for their businesses that they work for. And again, I think, articulating, teaching over this particular medium has its own set of challenges. So I think she did it, to the best of her, ability. And I think she built a lot of, fantastic theoretical foundation before jumping into the code. Because I think the temptation is to jump into the code very, very quickly and kind of, get that thing done. So awesome. Thank you so much, Abhini. This was really, really helpful. I just want to make a few announcements over here. We're going to, for those of you who are interested in generating certificates for themselves of participating in this particular webinar, you will get a link. The link will be for a feedback, form. Give your feedback. Once you complete the feedback, you'll automatically get the link to generate the certificate. Awesome. Thank you so much. You will get this particular Jupyter notebook. It will be shipped to you by tomorrow. So be rest assured about that particular thing. All of you who have registered for this particular event will get that particular thing. Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to take maybe just one more, quick chunk of your time, and that is just to quickly kind of share with you what we have lined up for you in time to come. So I'm just going to share my screen for a minute. Abhini, if you can just stop your sharing.
Yeah.
Got it. So I believe you're able to see the screen. We have what we call as the 5-day data science workshop. The 5-day data science workshop is conducted by people who have the experience, expertise, passion for teaching, and the facilitation skills, who have done this time and again over this particular medium. And in this particular 5-day bootcamp, we will be completing one project. So today we looked at one particular project in 1 hour, but in this 5-day bootcamp, which is for 7.5 hours, we'll be only looking at one particular project. So this is something like an in-depth kind of a treatment. So we have 5 sessions. You will have one GitHub repository, one project deployed over there. You'll also have one particular blog post. So you will see the whole journey of, how you kind of, build it out, showcase it, project it to the prospective employer. How does it matter? Why does it matter? How to communicate? So this is like, if you want to live a life of a data scientist for 1 week, for 5 days, this is it. And this is a program that we're designed just to give you a flavor. You won't become a data scientist at the end of it. I want to repeat this. You will not become a data scientist. No one becomes a data scientist at the end of 5 days. This is something where people should go through it, where they understand whether, they are really enjoying, whether they want to do what they're doing, and then they can decide to do, upskill in a full-fledged kind of a way. You of course get access to a particular learning platform that we have, and a whole host of goodies that come with it. Please join in for this particular 5-day workshop. This is starting next week, Wednesday. This is starting next week, Wednesday, 27th of May. Please join in for this particular session. We will be sharing the link for that particular session over here. This is a paid session that comes at a very, very nominal cost. This is not even a cost. And this is, something that is like a freebie, but we just want to make sure that all the people who are really focused and wanting to do this are part of this particular thing. Again, there is a certificate of completion and everything, but guys, I think what really matters is what you get at the end of this particular workshop, and that is one full project. You basically live your life as a data scientist for 5 days, and you will have answers for yourself, and you will have a clear road ahead with respect to, how do you want to navigate your career. You still have time. Lockdown is extended. How do you launch your career in data sciences? We'll be looking into that very, very clearly. Hands-on, 5 days, one project, in-depth treatment. Please join in. This is starting next Wednesday. You will have link in your chat right now. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Abhini, we have a few questions over here, or maybe I think we don't really have many questions. I think a lot of them did get answered. So I think we'll be here. It's already 8:11. If any one of you has any question, please feel free to chime in. We'll be here online for the next 5 minutes, and if there's something, we'll be very happy to answer. So Abhini, if you can just stay online for the next 5 minutes, that would be awesome. So I can see a few links shared over here. We have the feedback link that is kind of shared over here. So please share your feedback. We take that very, very seriously. That helps us curate the future sessions in a much more interesting way. We want to keep these sessions absolutely, aspirant friendly, and that's why we keep it like from the basics, right from the theoretical foundations. I'm getting some very interesting questions. How much do we pay for 1 week workshop? The price is 499 plus taxes. 499 plus taxes. That is Indian rupees. That comes to 590 Indian rupees. That's over here. If you are a fresher, if you've done your BSc, that is 10 plus 2 plus 3 or equivalent degree, I think this is really awesome for you to get started. You will have a flavor. I really saw some link over here with someone having 15 plus years of experience. So the thing over here is that even if you have 15 plus years of experience, you can always get back to coding if you have not coded. See, remember, I think I'll just give you a very simple, practical piece of advice. Um, if you have to learn Python, and Python is like English, you will have to practice for 30 minutes, 30 minutes, every single day for 30 days. I'm not going to tell you you're going to become Python expert in 5 days. No one becomes that. You have to study Python for 30 minutes for 30 days. At the end of it, you will be able to write very elegant Python programs. So even if you don't know Python, I think you will be able to read, interpret, learn a lot, pick up, get the right foundation and be able to launch into your career. So I think this program is very much for you. Please join in for this particular program. Even if you have no experience in data science, it is absolutely for you. It is exactly for you, in fact, because we want to make sure that you are here, you understand what this is all about, and you end up liking it, or you don't end up liking it. But this is something that is exactly going to give you the answer. So please. Uh, so, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to share my email address. There are people who want to do like a quick one-on-one kind of a conversation. So this is my email address. I try to respond to a lot of emails that come over here, and I promise to respond to all of them. So I'm going to post my email address. It is mayuresh.shilotri@greatom.com. So if you want to have a one-on-one conversation, please drop an email over here. I think you will get an answer. There are multiple people who can answer on this. So I'm just seeing very interesting question, Meghala. Sir, I'm a mathematics student, whether I can learn Python. Please check out the webinar that was conducted 2 weeks ago. We had one of our alumni, his name is Jasraj Date, mathematics grad and BSc, MSc. He's now a data scientist working with Emotex. Absolutely can. Shaurya has a question. To become a data scientist, do we need any degree in data sciences? Shaurya, data science is really about coming across very strongly in the interview process and being able to solve your prospective employer's problem. I would genuinely recommend that you join one of the webinars that I do with respect to how do people make this kind of a transition, a step-by-step guide, where I think these are exactly the questions that come up. So even if you don't have the kind of foundation, I think you can definitely do a lot of these things. So yeah. Interesting question. Sheikh Shabir, does the 5-day bootcamp explain? Yes, it does explain all of those things with respect to data cleaning, pre-processing, feature selection, dimensionality reduction. Just to set your expectation crystal clear, we will be kind of walking through the code over there, explaining you the concepts, getting you the whole larger picture and the details and the notes and the notebook and everything. But just make sure, I just want to say this once again, you will not be a data scientist at the end of these 5 days, but you will exactly know what this whole thing is all about. You will have the whole project deployed, and then you can make a conscious and a clear decision that whether you want to become a data scientist or not want to become. I think it is one of those excellent dipsticks. Shashank Srivastav, life coach, awesome. Thank you so much. Sir, our oldest learner is 72 years old, and the second oldest is 62. The person superannuated from Hexaware at a very senior position. He was a vice president in North America. and there are people who are starting with their data science careers at all points in time. So, sir, I think you're just the right bracket to make this thing happen for you. Can you brief about the project involved in the bootcamp? So the project is about the banking industry. It is about a Portuguese bank, and it's a classification problem. It's posted on that particular model, but what I understand, what I get from this is that it is not totally clear. I'm going to make sure that it is more crystal clear over there. So I'll update the website right away. Okay. Okay. So Prajit Paul, that's a very interesting name, Prajit, has a very good question. Knowing Java Python is not enough. We should be in a process to practice. What sort of practice we need to get employed? Prajit, very, very, very valid question. See, guys, if you look at just go to Google and search for the most popular programming languages at this point in time, and you are going to come across Python and JavaScript. Python and JavaScript, both the languages are really awesomely, superbly doing well at this point in time. So it is not about a particular language or anything of that sort. I think it is practice that is very, very important. Most importantly, it is about moving from those toy data sets, small data sets, to large production grade environment, building out the whole end-to-end projects, and that is something that is totally and very, very important. Great. So awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Monica is from biomedical. Would it benefit? Absolutely, Monica. Please do join in for that particular 5-day workshop. You will have your own answers. There are people from. I have a background in pharma. I have. I'm an engineer by profession, but I've worked in pharma, basically payer provider pharma, as an industry for close to 4 years. So people do make this kind of a transition. Um, awesome. I'm a medical student. How can it be helpful for me? Buddha, Prasad, Sham, absolutely. So I think there are lots of applications. So as I told, I have myself worked in the pharma kind of space. So please, I think this is going to be absolutely relevant and important and interesting. How do we practice with those data sets by our own self? Any suggestions? Meenal Singla, please check out UCI Dataset Repository. UCI Dataset Repository. Tons of data sets over there. You should be able to find something that you like and practice on top of it. Kumari Ishika, we do the end-to-end project over here, and we will be hand-holding you throughout the whole step. Here, even if you don't have any kind of a background in programming, you can definitely come and join in over here, because you will actually discover how that whole thing happens, and it might just be the tipping point that you're looking out for. Can we do Python without the knowledge of programming in C? Absolutely. See, I think C is a very um, a fundamental language. I think there are a lot of languages that have come from C to C++, C++ to Java, Java to JavaScript. I think it's a long chain, and Python is somewhere in the whole hierarchy. It has taken the good parts from a lot of different languages. If you have a background in programming, any kind of programming, I think you're definitely in the right bucket. You will be able to make this kind of a transition. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Timing for these 5-day workshop, it is 7 in the evening. At this point in time, if there's any change, we'll let you know. Consecutive days, it will be from 27th. It will be on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then there will be a 2-day break. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there will be a 2-day break. We want you to do stuff. See here, I think the session is for 90 minutes. Each session is for 90 minutes. At the end of this particular session, we would also want you to be working on your own. So there is a kind of a homework over here. So each session is 90 minutes, and we want you to also work. Pranav, mechanical engineering, sir, lots of people from mechanical engineering who are becoming data scientists. See, remember, you've done C, C++ in the first year. You've done a lot of simulation softwares across the 4 years. You have a very strong quantitative bent of mind. So you are in the right zone space. Please be part of that particular thing. Pon Raghu Raman. I'm sorry, I got your. I must pronounce your name. Is data science connected with machine learning? Absolutely yes. There are just semantic differences between all of them. I'm not giving a very purist answer, but yes, machine learning is a subset. You should just look out for machine learning, AI, data science, and you will get a Venn diagram on the web, which is fairly accurate. I think you should be able to looking out for that. Awesome. Mohammed, thank you so much. Shaurya Tripathi, we are going to be working on a banking kind of a project across the 5 days. So please. Shivaranjani, if you missed any of the days, we would not recommend you to miss any of those days. Absolutely not. But the recording is there for each of the days. But again, that's not the point. You don't want to miss the 5 days. You just want to be there for all of them. Project deployment using Flask, is it covered in the program? No, we are not. We won't be building any kind of an endpoint. See, that requires a very different kind of a. So we're not getting into Django. We're not getting into Flask. We're not getting into any other Python libraries. See, we want to do focused work, end to end, complete, and have a good understanding at the end of it. Ravi Sridhar, thank you so much. I acknowledge that I've received your mail. I will work on this particular thing. Shaunak, the answer is yes for you. 27th May to 5 working days, excluding Saturdays and Sundays, Vaitishwara. Thank you. Pallavi, the fees is 499 Indian rupees plus taxes. Thank you. 94 CCE 7CF. Sir, please tell me which model is used for different types of data set. How do we decide that on this data we apply a particular model? Model and which algorithm that you use on a particular data set is not dictated by the data set, but actually dictated by what kind of a problem are you solving. On the same data set, you can do a classifier, you can do a regression, you can do a prediction, you can do any of that. So possibly it's one of those ill-poised questions. The answer is absolutely. Gaurav Agarwal, is the first priority to learn Python or data science with Python? So I'll give you two answers. One is when we actually start with the whole program, which is the program that we have on our website, grayatom.com, learn and upskill. We very much focus on people getting started with Python. For this particular 5-day bootcamp, we've designed it in such a way that even if you don't have any foundation in Python, you should be able to get along and absorb and learn all of it in its entirety. But having foundation in Python is absolutely necessary. So, short answer. I can see quite a few registrations coming in. We will be sending out the confirmations and everything, so don't be worried about that particular part. Awesome, great. Thank you so much. I believe we'll be here for another 5 minutes. If you have any other questions, let me know, and very happy to take your questions. Madhumita, I believe ECE is electronics. Is that electronics? If you can just clarify that. Monica, can you repeat your question? Can you just copy paste it? Yeah. Okay. Madhumita, I am an electronics engineer. From 2009 to 2013, I was a data scientist. I worked with multiple companies, so you can become a data scientist. Monica, can you repeat your question? I'm really sorry. I think different engineering disciplines have different abbreviations all across this country. So I'm an electronics engineer myself. Electronics engineering, the whole curriculum, apart from the maths 1 to maths 5, you do a lot of electronic circuit analysis, design, analog integrated circuits, digital signal processing, um, and possibly you get into Tannenbaum somewhere in fifth or sixth semester. And then you go and get into robotics, power electronics. So it's a very different kind of a curriculum, honestly. Data science is not totally 100% related to it, but at the same time, you have the foundation to make it into the career in data sciences. So I think that's my answer to you, Madhumita. I'm an electronics engineer myself, uh, a pure electronics one, not the electronics and telecom, but just the electronics one. So yeah. What are the important topics we have to study for data science? Question from Isha Srivastav. So Isha, with respect to data sciences, you start with Python, get your foundation over there, start getting to supervised and unsupervised learning. Make sure that you start absorbing the mathematical concepts when you're doing all of these things. Don't learn maths and statistics in isolation, because then you will not be able to connect it with the application part. You get deeper into models, especially on the classification and the prediction side, both. You pick up at least one particular domain like natural language processing, because you'll come across a lot of projects when you go to the actual working environment into one of those things. You do a bit of time series, that's definitely one of those things. And yeah, best thing what I can recommend to you is, Isha, if you can go to the Grey Atom website, download any of our brochures, you will find a very good spread of curriculum that you need to cover. Shaunak Day, I started my career as a management. Right. So Shaunak Day, I was working with Cognizant at some point in time. Let me just stop sharing. Yeah. So Shaunak Day, I worked with Cognizant Business Consulting as a management consultant at one point in time. And I was exactly doing what you're trying to kind of suggest over here. And that was way back in 2009, 2013. Uh, at that point in time, that career option was extremely lucrative and very much in demand and relevance. This, at this point in time, 2020, 2021, 2022, is not a mainstream career. There are roles for these kind of companies, absolutely, but it is not something that is happening and something in demand. You want to get more programmatic, you want to get more hands-on. That's my 100% clear advice to you. Don't think of just that I will be able to do some visualization, client engagement, some sort of a people management, and also be able to articulate, analytics and data science. I think that won't cut at this point in time. You really want to have to get your hands dirty, get deeper. So yeah, awesome. How is data science different from data analytics and big data? I think data analytics and data science, there are differences, of course. Big brother, small brother kind of a thing. Big data is more about data engineering, where you enable the whole data infrastructure for all the teams within the company. When you have data sets that get bigger, you need to use tools which are able to handle those bigger data sets. That's a very layman answer. You can easily challenge me for that, but it's a very simple kind of an answer over here. Charita, yes, I'm still a student. I'm student still. I'm studying BCS. On which point should I focus for easy understanding Python? Uh, I think this is a great time to be a student. With respect to Python, grayatom.com has a Python program, Python for data science. Please get started with that. It is free. Python for data science. Go to grayatom.com, go to resources, find free programs and do that particular thing. Please give yourself time to onboard Python. Be consistent about it, and you will be able to make that kind of a transition. There are multiple programs available on Python on the web also, so you can just take any of them, to be very honest. But just make sure that you keep on practicing. Practice centeredness is very, very important over here. The program that we have has close to 123 assignments, 123 practice problems that you need to do. It's very, very important. Thank you. Great. Good to know that. Can a science graduate be data scientist? Absolutely. 100% yes. Great. Awesome, guys. It is 8:32. Thank you, Abhini, for staying with us till um, this time. I'm once again going to share my email address. If you have any questions, please chime in over here and I will get back to you with all the responses that we have. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day. Stay safe. Stay home. Use your time wisely. After the lockdown, and the lockdown, I don't know, depending on what part of the country you are. I'm in Mumbai. Things are pretty bad over here. The lockdown is going to get extended again and again and again. At the end of this particular lockdown, you won't have an excuse that I didn't have time. At the end of this lockdown, you won't have an excuse that you didn't have time. Take those baby steps, move ahead, upskill in anything that you want, anything that you like, but please use the time wisely and make that transition happen for yourself. At any point in time, you need my help, you need help from Grey Atom, please reach out to this particular email address. The best thing is to get onto this particular 5-day workshop. There's nothing like this in the market at this point in time that will give you the whole flavor, and you will be the best position to make this kind of a transition. Thank you so much once again. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Monica R, but again, the email address is with you. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much. Bye. I'm going to be on the bridge for some time. I'm going to switch off the camera, switch off the mic, and I'll let everyone exit in the next 5 minutes, and then I'll kind of switch off the session. Thank you so much. Bye.